morning, afternoon actually. Welcome to all of you. My name is Wayne Steve. I'm Director of Experiential Learning, and I'm part of the Entrepreneurial Center team that's been working to bring you speakers and events like this. We're all very glad to have you here as part of a week-long series of events celebrating our veterans. I'd like to acknowledge all the students here, faculty, and a couple of our academic leadership. Dr. Linda Rinker, our provost, Dr. Pamela Parado, our dean of the College of Business, and my colleagues. So my formal role is to introduce Dr. Chris Hamster, who's going to be the moderator of our panel today. Chris is a faculty member in the College of Arts and Sciences, and will be leading us in the panel discussion.
Very good. And I am significantly nervous. Any of you Com 120 students that are here, I always tell you, don't start off any good speech by saying you're nervous, but I'm a little bit nervous here. So, all right, so you get to break the rules as well. But I'm glad to be with you, and thank you, Wayne, for this. Let's first off just start off with a good hand and round of applause. Just this building, but this center has been really one of those pivotal and key spots for Davenport University over the last 3, 4, 5 years. And to see this grow and develop, and now to be able to do opportunities like this is really, really neat. And so when I was going back and trying to come up with a cool introduction and an opening for this thing, I went back to try to figure out where a lot of entrepreneurs got started. And come to find out that a lot of entrepreneurs start out in a garage or a small room. What do you know, just like this? Okay, that's all you got. That's the best. But no, actually, you take a look at this. Everything from Harley Davidson, it started in a garage back in 1910 when one of the founders started putting engines on bicycles. You take a look at Google, it started out in a garage. Steve Jobs started out by hand making computers in a garage in California with Wozniak. They had to do 50 computers in 30 days and deliver those. And so some of the greatest ideas are started in a small room with just people putting their hands down and getting the work done. And so I'm really pleased to introduce our panel here today and have them introduce themselves very quickly. We've got 2 people online, and we've got 3 people in seat. We'll be asking questions to them, and so part of the fun for me is that we'll do a quick introduction of it, and we'll have them introduce themselves. I would like to honor their service by just having you very briefly explain a little bit about where you served and what you've done. And then we'll start some questions. I'll have 2 or 3 questions, but your job here is to be able to ask some questions as well. All right, so I'm going to try to sound cool here. You feel me on this? You got this? Some of you are cringing because I use that too often in Com 120. So. All right, so let's start off, and we'll start online. And Michelle, since you're up and you're on the big screen, let's have you start off, Michelle. Very briefly explain where you're beaming in from, and let's talk a little bit about your service and what got you into this whole idea of entrepreneurship.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Michelle Ballard. I'm the ITS manager here at the East Team in Lansing. I'm on the Lansing campus. I was in the military. I was in the Army National Guards for 8 years. I also served over in the Persian Gulf War during the war period. I also was experiencing a need that was not being met in my area, and I started a business in farrier, which is to trim horses' feet or shoe horses.
Very good. Could you spend a minute and talk a little bit about being a farrier? I come from Colorado and I'm pretty familiar with the work, but I don't know how many folks here in Michigan understand what's all involved in being a farrier.
Well, I started out going to a trade school in Oklahoma, and I spent 7 months there training and learning about horses' feet. And we focused mainly on their feet and how we can take care of their feet. And how we can put shoes on, different types of shoes, how we help them with the shoes, and how we even make them by hand. And so it's using a forge and bending iron, plus nailing the shoes onto the horse's feet and trimming their feet, and kind of like a pedicure for our horse.
Very good. Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate that. One of the cool things about entrepreneurship is you never know where that opportunity will come from, right? So let's give Michelle a hand real quick here for that. And so Dale, you're next. Dale, let's talk a little bit about your service and what brought you into this world of entrepreneurship. You're on.
All right. Hi, my name is Dale Konzinski. I'm a retired Marine officer. I got into the Marine Corps back in just right prior to the during the Vietnam War, and I'm actually probably I was the last pilot set to go over to Vietnam when the war was over. Kind of a little tidbit there, and I've served in Korea, Japan, Philippines. I'm perhaps the only Marine officer that on active duty went to the Wharton Business School. Subsequently, I got into academics and then now been with Davenport for several years. Entrepreneurially, I actually got into I'm one of the guys that, probably could have used some really good advice when I first started out, because I started out as a day trader before the day trading was even in vogue. I then moved on to a maintenance company. I've managed several Taco Bells, and I've also been one of the key individuals in a telecommunications company when AT&T broke up. Currently, I'm heavily involved in real estate, rental housing, and I'm doing a lot of things with craft breweries as a advisor. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, and the activities that I'm doing.
Okay, so Dale, one of the things that I always, as I was reading through your biography, and I've run into you often as we do some of this stuff at Davenport University here, what do you really want to be when you grow up? I mean, I've got 6 or 7 different things that I've heard from you.
I never know that. I'm always, I learned long ago that, one of the biggest things about being an entrepreneur is you have to project the future. And you have to look at what's coming down the line. If you're in today and just looking at things today, then you're way behind. You have to look at what's going to happen tomorrow, where the moves are going to be. For example, last night I was watching Shake Shack, and the president of Shake Shack was on there, and they're getting into moving ahead on basically telephone, online ordering, things like that. And that's something that people have not been able to do very well. And then one of my students brought up a McDonald's, manager of McDonald's or owner of McDonald's business doing the same thing. And those are things that you have to do as an entrepreneur. You have to look ahead. You have to see where things are going and what are going to be the future needs.
Very good. So this is Dale Brodzinski. Everybody give him a hand. So we're 4 minutes into this thing and we've already gotten some gold, all right? If you guys want to take some notes, I want to encourage you, pen and paper, write these things down. Those of you that are technology, get those thumbs going, okay? So pull your phones out. I want to make sure you get some notes down on this, whether for your finance or your comp class. This is important for us as we move forward. And so the folks in the room here, this is a former colleague of mine and somebody that's been very influential in my life, not just as a professor, but as somebody thinking about academics. So Frank, I'm glad you're here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your service and what in the world are you doing now? I know a little bit, but why don't you tell this group? So go for it.
If I could, let me pick up on what Dale said. How many of you want to be entrepreneurs, start your own business? How many of you want to then go into it? How many want to go to work in a company? You want to be in a company? It's okay to raise your hand. Here's my point. There's a thing called intrapreneur. Okay, so the entrepreneur does a lot of, they're self-starting. You probably have some ideas, but many companies have intrapreneurial opportunities. Pick up what Dale just said. These companies are knowing that it's changing. They've got to be moving. They've got to go fast forward. And so they set apart parts of their organization to do just that, experiment, to take some leading edge efforts and so on. And they do that with the corporate safety net under them, okay? So there's a difference between the entrepreneur and the intrapreneur. The intrapreneur has the safety net. The entrepreneur may not have a safety net, okay? My background, I went to a military college called Virginia Military Institute, Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, once upon a time. My dad was in the Air Force. I grew up with a fascination for airplanes. So guess what I did? As I got out of college, I went into the Air Force. I had this great idea that I was going to fly a very cool, at that time, F-4 family jet. Going through the flight physical, they determined I needed to wear glasses. Goodbye, flying the Air Force family jet. But they said, you know, you would really be good in the airlift business. So for the next several years, I was in C-130s, 141s, and C-5s, very large cargo aircraft. What a cool job that was as a young person. Coming back from Okinawa, 3 years on Okinawa, I asked for what my next duty assignment would be, and they said, you're going to be the chief of publishing for the Air Force Communications Command. Mind you, bachelor's degree is biology, chemistry, then on the flight line and around large aircraft. How did you get publishing? To which they answered, you can read a book, can't you? I said, yep. They said, you're qualified. So in a way, that was my first real entrepreneurial experience. I had to jump in and learn about microfilming, and printing, and editing, and texting, and all back then. That was their form. And it made you learn a lot of things fast. And that really, I would say, the military experience helps you to learn, adapt, and improvise as you need to, but meet whatever the requirements of the mission. So leaving the Air Force, I went to a little company at the time. North Incorporated at that time was $40 million in sales. And I started up their Midwest division of sales. It was just me and a couple of other folks, and a lot of territory. And so that was an entrepreneurial experience there for me. Leaving the Air Force and leaving Hayworth at one point, definitely leaving Hayworth, I went into public service. And the job was taking a small economic development corporation and bringing business to the state of Virginia. So that was truly entrepreneurial in its everyday business. And then lastly, before coming into academia, I ran a company of about 10 million in sales. It was a subsidiary of a larger company, and we had about 100 people. And every day I was concerned with how do we make the payroll, how do we pay the suppliers, and all the things entrepreneurial experiences. So what that developed in me is not expertise, but rather a heart for the entrepreneur. And it's understanding of control.
All right, so let's give Frank a hand. Thank you very much. Already you can see some of the different skills and abilities that people are bringing, also the different industries. I'm curious about Jill here and kind of your experience and where you come at. I was reading the biography, Go Scavenger Hunts. What in the world is that? Can you explain that a little bit to us?
My name is Jill Hinton-Wolf. I'm the co-founder of Go Scavenger Hunts. So we create shared live experiences in the form of a scavenger hunt that people play on their phones. So we create challenges, a lot of times for team building, for teams to go out and have fun connecting with each other, learning more about each other, but we also do birthday parties and marketing campaigns and that kind of stuff. So again, all done on an app. My military experience, I say I was in military intelligence, and I can tell you what I did for a living, but I would have to bore you to death first. Really a lot of sort of computer work. And I went for training for that in Pensacola, Florida. My first duty station was in San Antonio, Texas, where I actually was told I was going to be the public affairs officer. So very similar sort of experience. So I ran the battalion newsletter for an Army unit on a big Air Force base. And then got orders to go to Korea for 14 months. And when I got there, they told me, sorry, we don't have any openings for your MI job. So we're going to have you be a lifeguard. So that's what I spent most of the time in Korea doing. When I got out, I came back to Grand Rapids, finished my degree at Grand Valley, got a job at a small manufacturing company. I worked in the corporate world for about 20 years. Was at Hayworth for a little while, Priority Health, mostly in communications. I'm a writer by trade. And we were talking about how most small businesses are started in small rooms. I would argue those small rooms are mostly bars. That's where probably both of my businesses were started. So I started a little business called Outdoor Book Club, where I take women out to the woods and we bike and kayak and hike and backpack and do all this really great stuff. And we do it all around the book. And then sort of once I got that first business out of my blood, and that was the thing, they would say, you know, you do the thing that you're passionate about first, and then you do the thing that actually makes you money. Next, and that's what those scavenger hunts came from.
Very good. All right, so let's give Jill Hinton-Wolf a hand. Trying to follow up on that, yeah, there's something to be said about sharing some conversation over a cup of coffee or a pint. And so if you're legal age, all right, I mean, my bosses are here, so I gotta be careful with that. But there's something about those conversations, and that's what I'm hearing is the pivotal part, right? It's about having these conversations and just allowing the brainstorming to happen.
Absolutely.
Very good. So the final person that we have here is Autumn Hartpence. She's a new friend of mine that I just got to meet 20 minutes ago. So, you know, a brand new friend of mine. But Autumn, let's talk a little bit about your experience, what brought you here to this day, about your military and then the Entrepreneurial Center. So go for it.
Oh, okay. So, like, when he had asked you guys whether you wanted to work for a corporation or for whether you wanted to be an entrepreneur, it kind of transitioned to more of an entrepreneurial type mindset. I didn't start out that way. So in high school, I was kind of a big dreamer, wanted to do things independently. I joined the Air Force at 18, and my recruiter's like, well, do you want to be, you want to load bombs for a living? I'm like, that sounds great! I thought that was going to be like the coolest job ever because they're like, oh, you get to travel and you get to compete with other teams and all this stuff. I'm from Orlando, Florida, and they sent me to Rapid City, South Dakota. You know what I did out there, outside, in the snow, and all the time, and it's not like Michigan, but.
Yeah.
So then, after 2 years, I went to Germany, and then proceeded to travel, back and forth between overseas and stateside from there for about 10 years. And then I had got a knee injury, and I thought that was going to be the end of my career. And so I never really thought about, well, what if this were to end? What would happen now? Because no one ever tells you that if you lose your career that they'll take care of it forever. They're supposed to, but that's not always the case. So luckily, I got to do rehab therapy with my knee injury, and I got to stay in for a couple more years, but I had changed jobs to HR. But I really started to think about, if this were to never work out, what can I use from this experience to be able to carry forward, just in case if life were to ever change. Because when you're dead set on something, and sometimes life will throw you a curveball and you have that plan. So this is where the entrepreneurial mindset came in. I'm a very active person. I have a lot of hobbies. I love to learn a lot of skill sets. So I started doing things on my own. I did photography, I did babysitting, I did all these little things that kind of developed into these small businesses that made money, which paid for a lot of my trips when I was overseas on my vacation time. But that tended to grow, like the mindset of what I learned. So I changed my degree plan to HR. And I finally learned that I had developed degenerative disease in my knee and I could no longer be in the military. So I couldn't hold out for the full time. And that's the question I get the most is like, why would you get out at 14? Why would you? That's life. Things happen. I mean, you have to kind of have a plan B and C just to be prepared. And that's the best part about being an entrepreneur is you have total control of what you're able to do and not worry about what someone else is really controlling your life, especially your career. So when I got out last year, I thought I had a really good plan, and once again, this is another learning curve, because spending your entire adult life as military and then getting out in the world was like, what do I really do now? So I did what most normal veterans do when they get out and find resources. You go to organizations and you try to connect with people, and 2 weeks in, I had joined a business networking international group, so BNI, if you haven't heard of that already. And so, they're like, well, what do you do for business? I'm a veteran. I got out 2 weeks ago. I'm just trying to find stuff up to a new place to fit. And learning to write a resume was probably the hardest thing, because how do you capture all your skills that you learned in the military, all the things you do for hobbies, all the things you've done for your own personal business things to make money, even if they're little things, but that's still something to grow from. So learning how to write a resume, learning how to connect with people, how to not be this strong military personality, because, very engaging person, but not everybody is okay with that. So I really had to reinvent myself over the past year. And so I signed up to come to Davenport, started my master's in human resources, and started with the SBA, and tried to just connect. So not only that, I can be a better follower, so one day I can once again be a better leader. So at that point in time, when I joined these organizations, I didn't really see a whole lot of women, because I wanted to meet other strong-minded women and how they handle it. Men and women think differently. They still come to the same conclusion, it's just there's different routes to go still. And I started asking around when went to these events with like the LZ Michigan and, the Stars and Stripes. And I said, do we happen to have a women's group, for better women to grow with? And they're like, no, not really. I said, well, we need one. So I found a need for something, and I started a social group for women veterans called American Heroines of West Michigan. And I thought, that's really kind of a small group of people that I really want to grow from. I grew up in a first responder home. My mom was a firefighter, my dad was a paramedic, my stepdad was a police officer, my stepmom was Air Force. And seeing the kind of trauma that they have gone through within their careers are very relatable to what military goes through. So I have decided to expand my group to women first responders as well, because there's a lot of heartache. Seeing the news lately with the church shooting, Vegas shooting, that's all first responders. And they're people who are doing things right here at home, but they still suffer the same way military members do as far as being away from home on holidays, PTSD, going through some really traumatic events. So that's kind of what really brings me here now, is to take what I've learned to help teach other people to not let their career overpower them, but to gain confidence and wisdom from it to spread to others.
Very good. So let's give Autumn a hand. So I've got a list of questions that we've kind of prepared before, and we'll run through something about the connection of leadership and communication between their work in the military and their work as an entrepreneur. But real quickly out here, how many of you are in business? Let me see your hands here. Your major is in business. How many of you are in health? All right, very good. And how many of you loud and proud in the tech side of things? All right, very good. So you've heard already every one of these majors somehow in one of these stories as we're working through here. So when you have some questions here in a little bit, I want you to think about where you could send those. And so we'll go through the group again with this next question about leadership and kind of the role of leadership. I am the comm person here, so we do need to talk about communication. Sorry, that's just the way it is. But for you folks, I want to start off with Frank here a little bit, and then we'll work with the ladies, and then we'll go online trying to switch it up a little bit. But what is that role of leadership and communication? Is there a connection between what you've done in the military and as an entrepreneur? So kind of a bigger topic there. Frank, you ready?
Yes,
All right, you're on.
and the answer is yes.
Very good. How so?
There is a tremendous amount that the military invests in people, in not only teaching the principles of leadership, but providing a laboratory. I don't know if my colleagues would see it the same way, but every day you are in a leadership laboratory. All of these different assignments, different challenges, the ones you didn't expect, you had to pull from leadership knowledge and apply it. As you apply it, you get better and better and better in your skills. That translates directly to the business community, the role of work, whether it's health professions or IT. I think that your dean and provost would certainly agree that business leaders of organizations say one of their crying needs is people come to them with leadership skills, particularly those who have graduated from a college or university. So if you've been in the military or you have the opportunity to study and try your leadership skills and build them here, it will be valued in the workplace.
I would say if you're the kind of person that's willing to raise your hand and serve your country, you're somebody that's fairly comfortable with risk. And I think that has a lot to do with entrepreneurship. You have to be willing to stand up and be like, I'm going to fail. It's on some level, in some way, and I'm going to do it over and over and over again. And I'm going to have to be okay with that. So I love entrepreneurship both because it offers kind of a similar sense of adventure that maybe I got in the military, but also I think even more so entrepreneurship, like Autumn was saying, it allows you some freedom to be able to decide how you're going to solve problems, the kinds of people you want to work with, how you want to connect with the world, how you want to change the world. All that stuff is really important. You're much more limited, I would say, in your capacity to do that in your military service, but it gives you the foundation to say, I'm raising my hand, I'm putting myself out there, I'm going to do this, and entrepreneurship is all about that. So.
Very good. So we'll hear from Autumn, and then we'll go online here to Dale, and then we'll finish up with Michelle. But Autumn, how do you see the connection here?
Well, first off, not everybody is meant to be a leader. But that doesn't mean you couldn't be some form of leader. I think there's different levels. Like, for example, I like to lead from behind and delegate to my team little roles of leadership to teach them to be leaders. That way, it takes the pressure off of me having to make all the command decisions. And we did that in the military too. It's like, if I get the chance to be a leader or experience that, who knows how they can grow from it. So, and I do that with business now.
Very good, thank you, Autumn. Dale, you're up next. So what are some of your thoughts in terms of how that connection between leadership and entrepreneurship from the military and now fit? And I do see that you're still muted, so we might want to unmute that if you're ready to go.
Thanks. No, I'm like Frank. The military virtually every day gave me the opportunity to have a chance to lead. And in the Marine Corps, one of the things that we learned very quickly through the years was that if we trained our people below us how to lead, then we would be that much better off. And subsequently, we established the leadership academies for all our enlisted ranks. And the end result was just amazing. And this kind of transfers into the entrepreneurship thing, because one of the biggest things you have to be as the business owner is you're the leader. And everybody that works for you, you have to look at taking care of them and make sure that you're giving them the tools that they need to succeed. And it's just like in the military, we look out for the people below us, you have to look out for your employees. And when you develop that loyalty, if you have the correct business idea, there's no way you have to succeed. It's just impossible not to, because you have these people working for you that value your success, and because you value them. And again, it's probably the biggest thing that transferable skill from the military to entrepreneurship.
Very good, thank you, Dale. And Michelle, you're up next to kind of talk a little bit about this leadership and how that connects. I do see that you're muted as well, so we'll want to make sure we bring that up. Thank you. I forget that you're IT and you know how to use this stuff well. So.
Leadership is always evolving. You're not in a set framework. It's having that teamwork and knowing how to work with other people and how to inspire them to become leaders as well, and to share that workload. Again, an entrepreneur also has to have that open-mindedness to be willing to step outside of their norm and do something and reach out for even help or ask questions and be able to understand that that's okay. That's how you grow and how you develop in your leadership to further your business and to make it stronger. Find out what your customers' needs are and be able to build those needs and to be the better competitor, if anything, if you have competitors in your entrepreneurial business. So the military has taught me all those things, because we had to be competitive, we had to have teamwork, we had to think outside the box, we had to be able to step into somebody else's position to know all those things and what's going on and what keeps everything moving forward.
Very good, thank you, Michelle. Thank you. So the next question I'd like to talk about is kind of getting into the nuts and bolts of building a business, and I'd like to hear, it's kind of a two-part question from our panel here. What are some of the greatest challenges that you faced, one or two, and then what have been some of those heartwarming moments or those successes that you've had? While these guys are thinking about it, I want to make sure that you folks are getting some questions down, right? Some of you, it's cool that you're checking in and that you're playing Farmville or whatever, but make sure we're staying focused. And I'd like to hear some questions from you folks, because we had about half of you that raised your hands that someday you wanted to start a business, right? And so I'd love for you to think about your questions that you'll ask them after this, right? So make sure you're preparing some so that you can ask the panel here in just a few minutes. So I'm going to just leave it up to you guys, the panel. What have been some of the significant challenges or some of the ones that have been a real good success? Autumn, your hand went right up.
Well, I got a good one that was perfect for this. So a few years ago, I helped a friend of mine start an online business. He was doing health coaching and stuff and trying to reach us. And I helped build business dynamics for that as far as online coaching, how that would work, the PayPal, all that good stuff. So we did like online training as far as fitness, nutrition, all those good things. And they got up to about 355 people in about, in the course of like maybe 7-8 months, which was pretty good, you know, for first time. However, his focus was all wrong as far as he was more focused on the revenue, how much he made and stuff, and he stopped caring about people. It was too much of a marketing, and it just blew everything out of proportion, so we ended up losing all those customers. And I felt bad because, you know, I worked so hard to make it work, and it would have been great. But learning who you best with your partner, you know, are they good for you? Are they good for your business? It's who you partner up with. You know, do your research. How well do you really know this person? Do they have the same passion? Because if they don't care, it will fail you. And on the high side of that, so another friend of mine, I helped her start a LLC business last year. So she runs a Kumon Learning Center, and we started talking about business, and she said that she noticed that a lot of her parents that come up have dirty cars. She goes, we would make a great, you know, this would be a great killing if we did, you know, a car cleaning business. So we did. We put together a business plan about starting this mobile car cleaning business. And it is doing beautifully today, a year later, that they have an enormous clientele. But to see the birth of this small company has been truly phenomenal because people who you connect with are very passionate, as you are, just didn't see it right. So that's my tip.
Very good, I love that. So the physical fitness is what I heard, and then the mobile car washing business.
Mhm.
Make sure you have some cars. Very good. Any of our panel, other members on the panel here? I'd love to hear from each of you if we could. What have been some of those challenges, one or two, and then some of those successes that you've had in the past? Michelle or Dale? Michelle, you popped up big and large, but Dale.
Well, let me move on a little bit to this. If a couple things at the beginning, I think, as a new entrepreneur, one of the biggest challenges is you have this great idea, and then you think you're going to get started right away. You know, no business is turnkey. You have to build your building. You may have to renovate your building. How long is that going to take you? And during that time, you have to remember you have a cash burn. And all of a sudden, you finally get your business up and running, but then you don't get your first income, or, you know, you have all these bills, you have to buy materials, things like that. And it's really a difficult time. The other one is you have to think about is business regulation. And regulations mean you have payroll taxes, you have all kinds of different local, city, state taxes that you must pay by certain times. And a lot of people don't take this into account. So I would say that, you know, again, for my companies that I've been with, is that initial challenge to get that startup going till we have a cash flow. And then we also have to manage all those regulatory agencies that, you know, we have to fulfill whatever, you know, that pay our taxes on time and things like that.
Okay, thank you, Dale. Go ahead, Jill.
Yeah, I would say that,
Michelle go next.
I mentioned it earlier, like outdoor book club was the love of my life.
Yeah.
I'm passionate, I love being outside, I love books, I love hanging out with big groups of women and talking about important things. But towards the end of that business, I was starting to hate my clients. Like, I got tired of the pushback on the pricing. I was constantly babysitting them. I was doing all my accounting, marketing, operations, everything myself. And it just got to be to the point where I started to really dislike my business. And what that ended up was I was in a bar one night at a networking event, and I happened to meet my future business partner, and we had never met each other. She's here, she's Carol up there. And just started talking, and we kind of had this, I had this idea of, I found the URL first, GR Scavenger Hunt, and I'm like, wouldn't this be kind of cool? And within, I think, a week, we had a client and found somebody that was willing to pay us a really nice amount of money to be able to do this kind of work. And since then, we have just hit a groove where I'm the introvert and I do the marketing and the tech end, and she's out there in front of clients selling it, running a lot of the hunts and doing this work, and we just are like a well-oiled machine, and it just feels amazing to have a business that I can support my family with, but I still do outdoor book club, I still get outside, I just don't ask anybody to pay me for it anymore, we just all get together and have fun, so that was a big lesson for me.
Very good. So Michelle, you were going to go next, and then Frank, if we could finish up with you. Some of those challenges, but also some of those successes. So Michelle, if you've got a minute or two.
Yes, when I first got done with school, I had a minimal amount of tools and no money. You know, I was like, how do I start my business? Where am I go if I don't have the supplies that I needed? And so my first challenge was just trying to find the financing to even get the first customer. And so being able to think outside the box, how can I get the financing to start my business? And it was looking at, different avenues for, grants and so forth, or different things that would help support that and get that started. So don't think that you're limited. Just because you may not have any money to start a business, there is ways to get that, and people that will support you and help you through those.
So Michelle, what were some of the first steps that you took to find those first customers?
I was trying to connect with somebody to do an internship with, and lo and behold, the couple of people that I got a hold of, they were just like, well, just start doing it. You don't need to have anybody with you. And I was just like, well, I don't have everything that I need. I kind of did it backwards from what most people do. I started out the business first and then said, oh, I need money to do it. So then I went into the military to get money to help fund my business. So I did it a little backwards than the norm. But I thought outside the box. I figured out a way to get money to fund my business and grow my business. But that's what I'm saying. Don't limit yourself. Don't think that you can't do it. There's all different kinds of ways to go about it, and just reach out to people and ask, and ask other entrepreneurs, just as we're doing here.
Very good. So I'm hearing a connection with the networking and just developing some connections. We're going to have you folks ask some questions here in a minute, but Frank, if we could hear some of your challenges and your success, and then you folks out here get to ask some questions for our families. So go for it.
On the challenges many have been spoken to, I would just like to encourage you, find the right people who can help you. And the way you find that is you tell people what you'd like to do. And you can talk to them about it in a conceptual way. You don't have to be extremely detailed. You will be amazed at how many people want to step up and help you, who will offer ideas, and you can tap in, as we talk about networks. It used to be, at least, and I think this is magnified today, there was the rule of 250. That is, each one of us has about 250 people that we share routinely information with. With social media, I'm sure that's magnified. If you tell somebody, I'd like to start a business doing something, whatever that is, you are now tapping into the networks of those people. You see how that continues to relate. And you will find out somebody really gets geeked by your idea. Or you may find out that, I really am weak in this area. There's somebody who's strong in that area who's just looking to partner up or to work with or help somebody who has a great idea. Right? So it's a matching of skills. It's a finding of fit. One beautiful thing, particularly about this West Michigan region of the United States, and certainly Michigan in its entirety, 15, 20 years ago, they were not as entrepreneurially minded. The last Great Recession, 2008 to 13, taught people, there's a lot of opportunity in entrepreneurship. And we in this particular region have set up entrepreneurship centers, one of which is right here, and really invested heavily in tools to help people. Millennials, Gen Z folks are notably entrepreneurially oriented. So are a lot of millennials. And this is a great time. If this was 20 years ago, the conditions wouldn't be quite as good. So talk to people about your ideas.
Very good. So let's hear from you folks. I'd like to get some questions popping up from the folks that are sitting here. Who wants to start us out with a question? Go for it. What's your name?
Cam.
Okay, Cam, shout it out.
So a lot of people, when they're looking to start a business or become an entrepreneur, they have a lot of struggles because there's a lot of things that go into starting a business that you don't necessarily learn throughout high school and in some cases college as well. So I'm curious as to, besides like your military experience, what was something maybe from each of you, or maybe one person has a good example, one thing like that you maybe uniquely can trace back to helping you run this business that you started, or helping getting started out with it?
So let me repeat this for our online folks to make sure. What I'm hearing in the question is that it's, what is the unique thing that each of these people learned or heard that helped them start their business?
Yes.
Is that accurate? Okay. Did you, Dale and Michelle, were you able to hear that as well? Oh,
Yes.
okay, very good. So anybody want to take it?
I will say, like, have you guys ever heard of mastermind groups? That's where you get like maybe 4 to 6 people maybe who are about at the same level as you're at, to be able that you get together once a week, once every week, and you start with what's gone well in my business, what hasn't gone well, and what do I need help with. Because a lot of your friends and your family aren't going to have any idea what you're talking about. They will think that you're weird and they don't understand why you're doing this. Just go get a job, all that kind of stuff. So if you have people around you that are just crazy passionate about entrepreneurship like you are, it helps so much, especially get through those rough times. Plus, they're just people to bounce ideas off of. Hey, I'm thinking about putting flyers downtown. Well, actually, you know what? A great place to put flyers is out of my university. You should come do that, right? Like you get these ideas, like you said, tap into their networks as well, find out what they've tried and hasn't worked. So I found that having just a small group of just rabid supporters, that mastermind group, has been key for me to be able to continue to do the work that I do.
Very good. So the mastermind group. Autumn, are you?
Oh, sorry, there's a fly on my face, but I do have one for you guys. So I was HR for 4 years with the military, but that didn't mean squat when I got out, because federal and private business is completely different. But to do my own HR consulting firm one day is kind of my dream job that I'm kind of building up to really bridge the gaps between other businesses, because they don't communicate well. But in order for me to be successful, I have to be a better follower. So right now I'm interning at Spectrum. I've already interned with other places doing HR to kind of fill those gaps. Also getting my master's degree in HR, that kind of helps me fill those gaps, because if I learn how the process is done from the most basic person and kind of work my way up, that will just help me kind of see the scope of practice to what I'm trying to accomplish. Now, if you're doing something completely new, first thing you want to ask yourself, is it needed? Is it something that, people would need, want, or they would even be interested in? Because if you make pet rocks or whatever and think that that's going to be a legitimate business, it's not needed. Are you going to be successful?
Very good. Dale or Michelle, any thoughts on what is some of that unique advice that you have gotten in the past that's really helped you on that entrepreneur side? If not, that's fine. Okay, so from the audience here, what are the rest of you? Any other questions? I thought I saw a couple of hands there. Go for it.
My name is Brent Holbrook. I'm the president of Student Veterans here. And I do have a question for you. We all kind of touched on funding very briefly, but my question specifically is, what was the greatest challenges to get funding, and how do you get a small business lender to, make that risk and take an investment in your organization?
All right, so again, I'll just repeat it to make sure everybody's set up. So small business funding, right? Where are we finding some of the dollars so that we can do what we want to do? Very good. I'd like to hear from each of you on how you guys have kind of gone through that. So Michelle, we heard briefly where you said to find some funding, you went back to, you started your business and went back. Were there other ways? And if we could start with you, how did you fund your business?
Well, when I got out of the first year in school, I didn't have any money, so I was looking at different avenues of how I could fund my business to get it started, because I needed supplies, I needed a vehicle. I talked to a military recruiter, and he was explaining to me how I could get bonuses for certain positions that I would enlist for, and that's originally how I got enlisted in the military to begin with, was by looking for money for my business. And so that's how I ended up in the National Guard, because then I felt I could be able to do my business and still serve the country and do my duty in the military alongside my business, and also grow my business at the same time. It gave me that flexibility. But that was what I had found. But now that I've been in the business for a long time, it's been over 20 some years that I've been doing the horseshoeing, and I do less of that now because now of my new position, and I've been in the IT world for over 12 years. I see some things I could have done differently. I know there's a lot more opportunities now to look at grants and other ways of getting money, because believe it or not, there's like women grants out there to help start businesses. There's grants for entrepreneurs out there. There's just a lot of different avenues. Plus there's people, again, network with people. There's people out there that are like, hey, I believe in what you're doing, how can I help? And so it's always keep looking and asking questions and talking to people, because you'd be so surprised what will come back to you.
Very good. Thank you, Michelle. So I'd like to hear from our panel here about funding.
Let me just pick up on that for a moment. Sometimes we think of funding, we have to have a large amount of money in a checkbook or accessible to us. There's other ways to do it, and it's called in kind. Sometimes you barter. So if I give you this, then I get that. No money actually exchanged. Let me give you an idea. My son started a business. And it's an IT-related business. He provided IT services for this organization that gave him office space and equipment. Therefore, he didn't have office rent, and he didn't have to buy equipment. And he was doing what he was going to do anyway. So that's a trade in kind, all right? There's another point of getting your funding, and that is be realistic. Try to find out where you can start and ramp up. Think of a ladder or a scaffold, okay? So if you go in and you have a beautiful end point, this is going to be let's say it's a $100,000 operation. Could you start with 10? What could you do with 1? And if you think that through, those who talk to you and have funds will be very impressed by the fact that you have an idea of how can I phase this, how can I build it. And entrepreneurs are classic for doing things with nothing. I mean, literally making it happen with nothing, right, in terms of resources.
All right, very good. Joe?
Yeah, I would be not the person to talk to about getting loans, because I think it's really a dangerous place to go. Like, I would say work your butt off if you have some big piece of equipment or something that you need to start delivering pizzas, whatever it is, and then start from there. One of the ways that I ended up funding my business, and I would highly recommend it to you as students, because it was free money and people are giving it away all over the place, are business plan competitions, okay? And it forces you to get really clear on what it is that your business and that your idea and what you want to do. And if you can stand up in front of a crowd and not come across as a total doofus, then there's money available. That's how I got $10,000 to start Outdoor Book Club. It's a phenomenal way. I think the training is also really good advice. I've done that a ton with other entrepreneurs. There's one other thing I was going to say. Oh, start with whatever it is that makes you money. So for Go Scavenger Hunts, what we originally started selling were these just small printable scavenger hunts, like PDFs that people could just download for $10 and go play on their own. And that just started to build that little bit of cash coming in. And we knew that we would eventually phase those out, because we really do, the experience is so much better if you can play on our app. But anything to start bringing that cash in, start doing that, as opposed to taking out a loan. I think you'll be better off in the long run.
I've heard there's quite a few in Grand Rapids, the 5x5 competitions, and there are different opportunities. It's just really getting your intent out for some of those opportunities. Great job. Before we get to Autumn about funding, how do you guys feel about giving your services away for free? Here's the story. I remember when the West Michigan Whitecaps were starting, they said no free tickets because they wanted to have a value of the service. So maybe I've got a loaded question here. How do you feel? I'm hearing the in kind. But do you ever just give your service away for free for a limited time to get people charged in, and then you can start to charge. Autumn, you're shaking your head yes?
Well, how are they supposed to know if they don't sample it at least a little bit? Well,
Okay.
hey, this was really great, and then they talk about it, and then the next thing you know, you're the talk of the town.
Okay, all right.
It depends on what the service is too. She has an HR interest background. Let's presume she becomes pretty specialized in that. Somebody is starting a new business and she offers HR help pro bono, right? Gratis, okay? Because she wants to see the business succeed. It succeeds. Do you think they'll forget about her? I don't think so. And she may end up benefiting through referrals or other ways to build a business. So giving it away that would be foolish. But if you're saying, why am I doing this? I'm giving up my time, my talents, and my treasury because, and then if you can answer that because question, then yes.
All right. How do you feel about this, Jill?
I think as entrepreneurs, we all have to show up and make it till we make it to a certain extent. So you want to be really careful about who you give it away to. We give away free hunts to nonprofits because, first of all, nonprofits, the people that work there, there's a lot of team building, tend to be really overworked. But we're here to make the world a better place. And if giving a free hunt to Family Promise, all our photos then go out on their social media. They're super grateful. We feel better about the work that we're doing. But we try to limit it to probably 2 hunts a year that we give away to a deserving nonprofit. And we feel good about that. That's worked for us.
Very good. So Dale, I'm glad you're back, and we're talking about some of the opportunities about funding. Where do you find funding, but also just this idea of whether I give some of the services away for free. So I'd like to hear from Dale, and then Michelle, and then we're getting close to being done with time. And so maybe one more question from the audience, and then a final wrap up for these guys. So Dale or Michelle, any thoughts about funding and how you go about doing that?
What I do is I have a relationship with banks. You build over time, and if that appears to work out the best, there's other avenues, small business association, the SBA, something like that can work. But I think overall, over time, you build a relationship with certain banks, use those, and I think that's primarily I tend not to use, a lot of people use friends and family, tend not to do that. Currently now, when you're talking about free service or stuff like that, I do a lot more what I would call pro bono stuff now, talking to people, helping people out. A lot of individuals, when you start the plan is an exit strategy, and most don't have them. And I think that's what I've been helping out a lot of people with is they're starting their plans and their businesses.
All right, very good. Thank you, Dale. So one more question from the audience here. One of the things that I'm hearing in a lot of these answers is just adaptability and flexibility, right? I'm hearing creativity in this as well. And so one more final question from the audience, and then I'd like to hear from you guys on what is your piece of advice that you want to give to this audience. So maybe get that stirred up. Any other questions from out here? All right, Brendan?
Knowing what you all know now, if you could go back to like fresh out of high school, would you do anything different? Like if you would, what would it be?
Very good. So fresh out of high school, would there be anything different that you would do? Kind of a fun question to ask. I know it's only 5 years for each of you from high school. But what would you do differently looking back at high school? Who wants to start? Jill, it looks like you've got something.
Oh, I don't.
No? Oh, if you don't, that's fine.
It's all like personal stuff. Like,
So Autumn's got something. We'll let the rest of you think. Go ahead.
Something now that I'm taking my master's, I'm over 30, and I have people who are like in their early 20s and stuff like that. And being from HR, I've kind of learned that you will hurt yourself at the end by going through the ranks without any kind of experience. Because if you're having a master's degree and you're 24 and you have no work experience, people are really skeptical about hiring you. So if I could tell anyone, or even my high school self, it would be work a little bit in a field that I would like, make sure that I want to invest in my degree that way, do my associates, work a little longer, make sure that's still my path, and then grow, because it gives me a good balance between my education and actual work will make me that much stronger, because if I do all one first, then I'll lack the other and I'll have to make up for it. So that's my
So
one.
kind of the balance, right? So high school, what would you do differently?
I learned coding. I would have learned coding.
Learn coding? Very good.
Coming out of high school, at that time, back in those eras, we took shop and mechanical drawing. And mechanical drawing got replaced by CAD, right? And shop, well, that took you about so far. What I really had was the interest in aircraft. What if I had followed that interest in aircraft coming out of high school and got into aviation? What if I was running an airport? What if, et cetera, okay? Could have been the maintenance part of that business. Who knows? I think what I would advise, though, for you is know thyself. Davenport has some wonderful tools here that they do through the advising organization that helps you assess what are your true interests, where will you best thrive based on your skills. You know, shamelessly exploit them so that you do know yourself, and that's going to point you in the direction of where your interests really are. Secondly, be able to sort what is a hobby from what is a profession. Right? Now, there are those phenomenally lucky people. Think of the Bassmasters, right? These guys are on a boat and they're fishing all day long and they're making money. There are not very many of those. My son had a very significant interest in cooking. That became a hobby. That was his avocation. It wasn't just a vocation in the end. Okay? So being able to sort that apart, give others to help you, but also there are some really wise people who can help you know thyself.
Very good, so I like that. Let's ask the group here before we go online to Michelle about her, if she was in high school. How many of you have taken a Myers-Briggs type indicator? All right, very good. I heard you talking about a Cove instrument.
Kobe, there's also the, again, I don't have current knowledge of what our advising group offers, but they're there to help you.
Yeah, very good. So just having some of those tools in place. So Michelle, you're up next. If you were to talk to your high school self, what would you do a little differently? And then we'll finish up with Dale there, and then we'll finish up the whole presentation in just a minute. So Michelle?
If I was to talk to my high school self, I would just talk to somebody that was in the business a little more and understand how they actually drew their business. Because I kind of fell into the area that I ended up, but I also had a passion for it. So it was something I was driven and really wanted to do and help other people with their horses. And so if I could do it over again, I would have done a little more research.
Right, very good. And then Dale?
Actually, I would not have done anything different. So I was very goal-oriented in high school, and I currently work with several individuals as a mentor and work with several high school students. But what I always told everybody to do was to have clear established goals, review those goals, and then make changes as necessary as you move through life. And only one time did I quit doing that, and then I had problems. But I have clear established goals. I write my goals down. I show them there they are. I keep them in front of me every day. And I have things that I want to accomplish. I have things to do, and I find that, like I said, the only one time I did not do that was in midlife, and I ran into some challenges. And then my brother woke me up and said, "How can you be doing this?" And I said, "Yeah, you're right." Went back to the goal list, and everything's fine. And I think that's the one thing that everybody has to do, because you build your life and your experience on what happens to you. How you react to those things that happen to you is how you're going to move forward. But if you don't have a path that is established and written down, and you know what you want to accomplish, you're going to get lost.
Very good. So we got about 5 minutes left, 5 panel presenters here. But I'd like to hear what is the one piece of advice that you want to give this audience here. So there will be time for you guys to chat and meet with the folks afterwards. But what is the one solid last piece of advice if you had, I've done it in our class where it's in 7 words, and I won't keep you to that, but what do you want us to know as we get out of here, and I'll just open it up for whoever wants to go.
Put your phone down. I realize that this is how we connect with people, and there's certainly, that's part of the business world, is being on social media and staying connected, but really limit that and decide that when you're bored or when you're feeling anxious about something, there's a better way to be able to funnel that energy, and it's 99% of the time not going to be on your phone. So get out there, connect with people, shake their hands. I actually am a professor at Grand Valley, like friend your professors if they're open to it on social media, so they can, you can share how your life is going and what you're looking for. Connect with business groups, especially as college students. You guys have so many resources available to you right now. So get out there, figure out where they are, meet people, connect with them in a genuine, authentic way, ask how you can help. And that, I think that will take you a very long way.
All right, so get off your phone. Very good. How about the rest of you? I'd like to hear from each of you. Go ahead, Autumn.
Don't be afraid to fail. I mean, just one step closer to succession, and have fun with what you're doing, because if you have fun with what you love, you'll never work a day in your life.
All right, very good. Thank you. Who's next?
Well, I go ahead.
All right, Dale, it's all yours. I saw Dale, then Michelle. It's always fun to see everyone else.
This gets back to something we talked about earlier, a unique experience. And one of the things that I was entrepreneurial trained at the Word Business School, and one of the pieces of advice that I would give everybody is that you make sure you have a feasible business idea with a solid business plan that has an exit strategy. And that's the best advice I can give to you.
All right, thanks, Dale. Michelle, you want to go next? I saw you popped out at the same time. Michelle, and then we'll finish up with Frank.
Keep an open mind.
Okay. Boom. All right, it's like put your phone down. We got it. Boom. All right, Frank, wrap this up.
Understand the fundamentals of business. It's running, blocking, and tackling. You don't have to go and do elegant things. We teach the fundamentals very well, and I'm here to tell you, at the very basic level, if you understood that, you will do well in business.
All right, very good. So as we wrap up here, I want to make sure that you fill out the evaluation form. If you would put on there something that you learned, that would help us out as we continue to do some of these. So everybody should have an evaluation form up there. I think back, and I'm kind of in this weird spot as a professor, right? I've got these great colleagues here who have done it and who have served our country, and then I've also got students like you who are out there doing it as well. I think about Kevin just down the street here at Computer Rescue 911. I think about Ryan, who's running his own business. I think about some of these folks who are cleaning windows or washing cars, and these are all great opportunities that you folks can do as well. And so that's why we have this Entrepreneurial Center. This is why you have the next 20 minutes to just chat and talk to each other. Use the time well, okay? So let's give our panel a hand as they finish up. When you're done with your evaluation, if you could give them the Mickey here, this would be terrific. Any final questions, thoughts, concerns? All right, good job, everybody.
Just real quick, so we actually have a speaker coming in tomorrow night as well from 5 to 6. It's dealing with insurance as an entrepreneur, so if anybody else is interested in going back, that'll be tomorrow right here from 5 to 6. And then real quick too, I want to thank our panelists as well and give them a certificate here for their appreciation for helping out. So Chris, we have one for you. Jill.
Thank you. Autumn.
Thank you. And Frank. So thank you guys for coming, appreciate it. And thank you all for your assistance.
All right, so come on up,